Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dawn Meglino. I am the HIPAA compliance specialist for Anatomy IT. I welcome you all and I thank you all for coming today and joining us. Hopefully, this will be of value and an education to everyone. So the HIPAA compliance specialist for Anatomy IT, I've conducted numerous thousands of HIPAA risk analyses for our clients as well as non-clients, hospitals, ambulatory surgery centers, CAHs. And in doing this, it has been a whirlwind of an education where you'll find me talking today sometimes about things that haven't changed a bit, which is a little sad, and some things that we really have done a better job of doing, and we need to do an even better job moving forward, especially with the cybersecurity changes and the threat attacks and everything that's going on in our environment. What we're going to cover today, and I'm going to jump off camera so we can just look at the slides. What we're going to cover today is addressing the critical updates that have occurred since the end of 2024 going into 2025. This is for HIPAA, the HIPAA Security Rule, which we'll talk about a lot, and cybersecurity awareness. We're going to provide actionable insights into these categories and hopefully answer some of your pressing questions on what we're going to do and what we can do better in the future. HHS OCR and NIST had a conference in October 2024 in DC. And at this, OCR announced their risk analysis initiative. Why? Because healthcare organizations are getting nailed for failure to conduct a risk analysis. This comes up all the time in breaches, all the time in incidents. If you receive HHS OCR's newsletter, you'll see this. What's the first thing? Did not conduct a risk analysis. The reason for this and the reason for the initiative is OCR is trying to assist us. They are trying to go back to the place of saying, how come this is happening over and over again? How can we help healthcare organizations better secure their environments? The HIPAA Security Rule Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or NPRM, was put into or submitted into the Federal Registry in December 2024. We are out for public comment right now. I am going to recommend to you that if you have the ability to do this, there is a one-page fact sheet. We're going to talk about some of the highlights today of the NPRM. But if you can, go and submit comments. Make your voice be heard with this. This will be open till March 7th. Where you will go is you're going to go to the Federal e-rulemaking portal at www.regulations.gov. And then you're going to look up the HIPAA Security Rule and the NPRM. Cybersecurity awareness. Well, we don't need to, anybody in the healthcare environment or not in the healthcare environment, all you need to do is say change health. This really created chaos. And so many organizations, maybe yours included, really had issues and struggled with getting payments, with having business continuing, with being able to make payroll on a weekly basis. The cybersecurity attack that hit Change Health literally changed the playing field for most of us. So what are we going to do? Do HIPAA training annually, do cybersecurity training, cybersecurity awareness training quarterly, or at minimum 3 times a year. There's so many organizations out there that can assist you. We have the logos, so to speak, of the organizations down below. The first one, CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency. Then we have NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technologies. HHS 405D, for those of you that I work with, I love this organization because there's so many free videos and tools and resources. And then you have SANS Institute or SANS.org. They have a security awareness maturity model that you can download and you can fill out. This stuff is outrageous and it's free to us. When we talk about artificial intelligence, these are the questions I want to ask you. Are you using AI? Have staff been trained on proper usage of AI? Are we certain no EPHI or PHI is being exposed or sensitive data? In our healthcare environment, we have to guarantee that if we are using AI, and AI is great, but it has to be used properly and it has to be used securely. OCR audits, they've begun. So in 2024, coming into 2025, OCR has initiated their random audits. For some of you, if you recall this, back in 2016 was the very first time that OCR did this. Why did they do it? Because they're trying to gain information. They're trying to go to a place to say, what can we do to assist organizations? They're not trying to beat you up. OCR is not the bad guy. If you or should you receive an email from OCR stating that you have been chosen to have one of the random audits conducted on your organization, communicate with them. Please do not ignore them. An audit does not mean a breach or a fine or a settlement or a corrective action plan. Very, very important. They're here to help us. They don't need to fish for breaches. I can assure you of that. So these areas are 4 of the key areas that come up in the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or the NPRM. The first one beginning with security. We've just discussed this. And the NPRM refers to the guidance for some of these very specific industry cybersecurity practices and organizations. I want to talk today, or I want to talk in this category about the healthcare and public health cybersecurity performance goals, or the HPH CPGs, because we know how we love our acronyms in the healthcare environment. So under the HPH CPGs, there are 2 categories for the goals. One is the essential goals, and one is the enhanced goals. The essential goals is really where you want your organization to be at today for security measures, for cybersecurity awareness. So I'm going to give you some examples. Email security, encryption not only with emails, but on devices. Revoking departing user staff credentials, extremely important. And multi-factor authentication, which we're going to talk a lot about today as we go along. The enhanced goals would be the goals that you want to strive for. These are the goals that, you've already got all the essential goals in place. And again, these are not requirements. These are best efforts to bring out our healthcare organizations into a better, secure environment. And under enhanced, we'd have asset inventory, which we're going to talk about next. Cybersecurity testing and mitigation, not just a DR plan, but a cybersecurity plan. Incident planning, detect and respond to threats, tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's a mouthful, but in order to do this, we have to stay one step ahead of our threat actors. With your technology asset inventory, what we're talking about is network mapping. Where does all your PHI lie, and where does it move within the environment? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about mapping. Network diagrams. Do we have everything connected? Do we know every single device that may contain EPHI, even if that EPHI is not moving within the environment? Workforce security. Under the NPRM, there is a proposal that a terminated user or a user that has resigned or been terminated, they are terminated out of the systems and applications containing EPHI no later than 1 hour after employment ends. Now, I know this sounds ridiculous, so you might want to make a comment to this, but I will tell you this. I know most of you are very, very good at disabling users immediately upon resignation and termination in your EMR, in your scheduling and billing, in your practice management systems. What about Windows? We go through this over and over again, and we're going to talk about this a little bit further on in the webinar, but it is extremely important to look at all of this. Additionally, are we looking at vendors? Are we looking at third parties that we no longer use, but they have an active account within our systems. Incident response, how quickly can you recover? This is a big one because if you can't, or if you're in a situation that you really are stuck, we're dead in the water. We can't see patients. We can't move. We can't do this. How quickly can we get back up and running? What are the most important technologies within your organization that need to stay running? What are those critical softwares or systems or applications? Lastly, with this backups, when you're talking about backups, are we doing backups on site? Are we doing backups off site? Do we have multiple off site locations for redundancy? And ultimately, are we testing those backups? Because you get to a place where you're in a situation with an incident and you find out that your backups are corrupted, then you have zero, you have nothing. So our shortcomings, unfortunately, we're still looking at the basics. Password policies, we're going to discuss that a little bit further on in the webinar, but let's talk about password length to begin with. Any system and application containing EPHI should have a password character minimum of no less than 11 characters. 11 to 16, 11 to 14. Some of you may be rolling your eyes, but I'm going to tell you this. A 7 or 8 character password can be cracked in 4 seconds. So what is the point of having a password that short when in our own patient portals or in our own financial in organizations that we deal with, whether it's 401k, it's our payroll company, it's whatever, we have to create 14 to 16 character passwords. Yet in an EMR, we have an 8-character password. Password policies, account lockouts, auto lock for systems, restriction on last several passwords. We're going to delve into that a little bit further on. Kill the shared user accounts. That's all I can say. When you have an account, when it's a Windows operating system where it's just the nurses, only the nurses share. There are no password changes in these accounts. Most of the security measures that occur are not happening. They have been disabled in these shared or generic user accounts. And furthermore, in this account, anything that is sitting in that account can be viewed by everybody who's using that shared user account. So whether I have the privileges or not, or I'm looking at Susie's password, or Susie's stored or saved her payroll stub, those are the kind of things that it's very, very dangerous. End of life systems, all I'm going to say is really Windows 7 operating systems, 2008 servers, 2012 servers, they have 0 security measures on them. This is low-hanging fruit for threat actors. I mean, you might as well just put it out in the news and say, hey, guess what? I still have a Windows 7 on my network. So if you want to have at it, be my guest. It's so easy for them to get into these systems. Employee training, I can't say this enough. Your staff is your front line. They need to be trained. They need to be up to date, most importantly on cybersecurity awareness. If you were to go to your staff today, any one of them, and say, can you give me 3 red flags for an email phish? Would they be able to do it? We are all patients somewhere. We don't want to have our identities or our medical information compromised or sold. You are doing your staff a service in educating them, because when they go home tonight or on the weekend and they're checking their personal emails, they'll say, hey, oh my God, I remembered that, Dawn told me not to click on that link, so maybe I should wait till Monday to call that organization. All you need to do is Google the HIPAA wall of shame. You don't have to do www, not any HTTPS. Just put in HIPAA wall of shame and it will come up. During the OCR NIST conference in 2024, OCR presented to us the basics of what typically happens when what they find as far as noncompliance when a breach or an incident occurs. They're the same. They literally parallel each other in almost every single breach. No risk analysis conducted or completed annually. The risk analysis is not a thorn in your side. It is a good thing. It discovers and uncovers weaknesses and vulnerabilities and things that you may not have looked at prior, and you can better secure the environment. I work with someone, or I'm friendly with someone whose client is going through a breach. In addition to the fact that the very first thing Office for Civil Rights will ask you for in the event of an incident or one patient complaint is your security risk analysis. This friend who has the client who's going through the breach, OCR asked them for the last 5 years of their security risk analyses. Business associate agreements. Come on, people, this is your insurance. You have to have these in place. They have to be signed by both your organization and the vendor and the third party. Very, very important. This is a HIPAA requirement. Outdated end-of-life solutions, we just talked about this. They're so easily compromised. So you have a Windows 7 device and it's running, or a Windows 7 operating system, and it's running on a diagnostic device. It has to get off the network. You have to work with IT. You have to, enlist someone or an organization who sold you the device, but it must get off of your network. You're just asking for an attack to come through. Unauthorized access to protected health information, inside or outside of the business. The next slide that we see will show you one of the breaches that occurred recently, and it was an inside attack. Very scary. We don't want to think about this. We don't want to think that this can happen, but EPHI and medical information and medical data is very, very lucrative on the black market. You can get a lot of money. Email phishing is still one of the number one ways that hackers, threat actors, attackers gain access into the environment. Why? Because it's a lack of training. As I mentioned before, do we know all the red flags in an email phish? This happens over and over and over again. Policies and procedures. Sometimes I have seen these gorgeous books. They're sitting on a desk, in a cabinet, on a shelf, and they're completely covered in dust, and they haven't been touched since 2017. In the event of an audit, in the event of an incident, if you were to have a patient complaint and OCR came back to you because they must address them, and they ask for specific things, and you submit a policy that you had from 2018, yeah, that's not going to fly. They need to be current. If they're applicable to your staff, if your staff need to be included in the knowledge that's part of the policy and part of the procedure, then you must present that to them. They must be able to sign off on them. You can't expect your staff to do the right thing if they don't even know what the right thing is. Patient's right of access. I think in 2024, there were like 30 plus fines and settlements with OCR for organizations that did not supply their patients with their medical information in a timely basis. You say to yourself, really? Come on. We have to educate our staff. We cannot ignore this. If a patient requests their medical information, you need to get it to them within 30 days. If you have an extenuating circumstance and you have a crisis within your organization, that can be extended, but you need to request that of the patient. So you can extend another 15 days, but you can't just ignore them. It's their medical information. So next slide, we're going to talk about a couple of breaches. So as I mentioned before, Montefiore, it was a malicious insider. Why? Because they realized and they found out that it was prudent to sell this information because they could make some money. It happens. Green Ridge and Heritage Valley Health, both ransomware attacks. Ransomware attack, I come in, I lock down your systems, I encrypt everything, I ask for payment before you get your data back. Under Heritage Health, we see the cost for the entity. The entity settled with Office for Civil Rights for $950K and a corrective action plan for 3 years. That's not an option. So a cap, typically what that means is that OCR puts the organization under a corrective action plan, and you are under a microscope for the next 3 years. And you need to produce policies and procedures. You need to show them that you have completed things, that you have fixed things, that you are going in the right direction. They don't ignore you for 3 years. So can you imagine that in addition to the daily job that you do at this point in time? I did a little bit of math. So I want to just bring this to you because I thought it was, I don't even know what word to use on this. From the beginning of January 2025 to present, there have been 66 breaches of over 100 or over 500 individuals submitted to HHS OCR. So this is on the HIPAA wall of shame. So they're under investigation. Again, breaches that affected over 500 individuals, 66 of them already. The total amount of individuals, 2,725,697 affected out of the 66 breaches that have been submitted. It's pretty staggering, right? Jen, next slide, please. So some recommendations. You have to inventory your PHI. Where does it all exist? Not only the workstations, not only the servers, not only the laptops, the diagnostic devices, the machines. Where else would it be? Could it be on tapes? Do we have a legacy system that we just back up or we have it on a drive somewhere? What about paper data, storage units? Let's say we've had changes within the organization. There may have been people that have come and gone that started initiating the storage facility, or there's papers in the basement and we don't even know that. It's very, very, very important to know exactly where all of your patient data lies. Multi-factor authentication. Whenever you can, enable it. That's all I can say. It's another layer of security. It's an extra added layer of security, and it is key, especially when you're talking about connecting remotely. So what do we mean by that? Well, it could be remotely to the server within the business environment. It could be remotely to the EMR, which sits in the cloud. Not sure. Email accounts, same. It is one more layer of protection that we would highly recommend. If you go to your EMR, you go to your scheduling and your billing software, and they say, yeah, we can't do that. Demand it. It has to be done. In this day and age, we have to do everything we can possibly do in order to protect our data. Vulnerability scans. If you're not conducting them, you don't know if someone can gain access into your system from the outside. One of the NPRMs was talking about vulnerability scans, and they were saying how they wanted to propose that vulnerability scans were a requirement twice a year. Now, that's a lot. But that being said, if we don't check these vulnerabilities, we don't run a scan, enlist your IT organization, enlist a third party. You've got to move forward with that. Under strong access controls, account lockout, auto lock. Systems need to lock after so many minutes of inactivity. You can't leave someone in exam room for 15 or 20 minutes with your computer wide open to the EMR. It's really dangerous. Account lockout. If you do not have an account lockout policy on your system, and I try to gain access, well, guess what? I can brute force over and over and over and over and over again until I gain access into your system. All right, I better pick up the pace here a little bit, right? What we're going to talk about next is actionable insights. So create an action plan, create an assessment. What do you have in place currently? What are some other things that we can do? What some other levels or layers of security that we could do? Is it additional training? Possibly. But those are the things you want to look at. Under documentation, your network mapping, like we talked about before, you have to know where your EPHI lies or your PHI lies. It isn't good enough to say, yeah, my IT company has all my workstations and my servers documented. Really? Okay, not good enough. Network diagrams. You have a disaster. You have something that occurs within the facility. A diagram can put your organization back together much more quickly if you had that in place. Disaster recovery plan, business continuity plan, contingency plan, business impact analysis. Call it what you will. It has to be in place. It also needs to be updated at any given point in time when your environment changes. At the end of 24, you went from servers on site to AWS or Microsoft Azure. Those are major changes within the environment. This has to keep up to pace. Additionally, testing. 2 examples of testing your DR plan. 1, you go to your staff and you say, next Tuesday, we're all going back to paper. Could everybody do that? Is that possible? We can't use our computers and we can't use our EMR. We're going to go back to the old days. Test it. Don't wait for a disaster or a situation to scramble to get through this. Another idea of testing, when you take your DR plan team and you put them together and you meet with them once a month or quarterly, you say, come to the table with a scenario. Bring a disaster or something that happened together, and let's talk it through. Let's document it. Let's figure out what we would do in the instance like that. Cybersecurity training. Can't say it enough, but it has to be done for everyone. Staff, doctors, owners, C-suite. We've got to make sure that everybody is aware and knowledgeable of this. So some of the questions that I get asked, is it necessary to use encryption on devices with emails containing EPHI or sensitive data? Yes. EPHI in transit must be safeguarded. That is a HIPAA rule. How are we going to safeguard it in an email? We're going to encrypt it. Data that is at rest needs to be encrypted. Encryption is great. Enable it on workstations. Utilize it. Another reason why, we talk about multi-factor authentication, another level of security. Why do I have to conduct a risk analysis annually? If you don't conduct a risk analysis annually, you do not know where your threats and vulnerabilities are within your organization. And as we've said before, the very first item that HHS OCR would ask for would be your risk analysis. This is a good thing, people. Do I have to review users and systems and applications? Yes. I have seen where there's been years since a review has been done. Oh, shoot, she hasn't been with us for 4 years. Oh, wow, I forgot that. Or vendors. You change DMRs. Your old practice management system or your old EMR still has an active account within your systems. It is extremely important. Review this on a regular basis. Do not do this just annually, and don't do it just upon a termination or a resignation. Set it on a calendar for at minimum 2 to 3 times a year. Last bullet, no, you can't do this on your own. You really can't. So you have to enlist others. You have to present to your management team the HIPAA wall of shame. You have to show them the newsletters from HHS OCR that state the fines and the settlements and the breaches that have occurred because of specific things. This is no joke. And then again, if you're a small organization and you're at the other end of this saying, there's 3 of us. Okay, well then 2 out of 3 of you can combine forces. And 1 works with the policies, 1 works with the HIPAA training and stays on top of everybody for doing this. You have to ensure that you're getting these things done. So in closing, I just want to say this. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Don't get to the place where you're scrambling because you haven't done some of these things. As the Boy Scouts say, be prepared. Enlist others. Ask for help. Ensure that you are absolutely engaging your whole team. I want to thank all of you for joining us today.